technology that he created to, try to facilitate these types of experiences. And then around like 2000, 2002, somewhere in there, like I was home for Christmas vacation, and like my dad had like the full set of Gateway Experience, which is, kind of the flagship HemiSync product. And he's like, yeah, you should check those out while you're home. I'm like, I didn't. And so then like fast forward all these years later, and it's all starting to come back to me now after my dad's passing. So like it was all in my garage. And so I went out there and started going through boxes, and sure enough, in one box there was like the full Gateway Experience set and Bob Monroe's books, and like an application he had completed to go take Gateway Voyage at the Institute. And so I thought, okay, like, this is clearly a sign, like, this is, more than coincidence.
You will definitely come across the CIA, right, and the Army, and how they invested pretty heavily in the 70s and 80s. And then it's just like, poof, they haven't again. Right. And so my question to you is, blink once for yes, blink twice for no. Are they secretly doing it, or like, why did it stop? So before I did anything, before I did Darius's course, before I did any other thing in the out-of-body world, I went to HemiSync and I got the Gateway program, okay, or the Gateway Experience is what it's called. It's one of the most popular, if not the most popular way to induce out-of-body states. It's through Robert Monroe's institute, right? They teach this process. HemiSync is the technology. And so there's a president of HemiSync. His name is Garrett. He came on the podcast today. I was very excited to have him. We talk about religion. We talk about the future of HemiSync. We talk about what they're working on right now. We talk about the CIA. A lot of good stuff in this one. I think you guys will enjoy it. Let me know what you think down below. And thank you guys for being here. I truly am humbled by the growth of the channel. I'm humbled that you guys are here and excited that you are seeking alongside with me, right? As we ask questions and we try to figure out what the heck is going on. So thank you guys for being here. Without further ado, let's get on with it. You did have an out-of-body experience when you were 33. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, that was the first really kind of visceral, classic out-of-body experience I had. When I was younger, I was always kind of like a little bit different, and I would have sort of unusual experiences that I at first didn't know were unusual, but then later on figured out that other people weren't really having these types of experiences. And so that's kind of like a whole separate story. But yeah, the one that I kind of most frequently talk about is the one that happened when I was 33. And so that was like 2010. It was prompted by the passing of my father the year prior in 2009, when he left physical matter. We were on bad terms, which was unusual for us. And so the timing of it was really unfortunate. And so it was all kind of prompted by a really deep, heartfelt desire to reconcile with him. And in those early months after his passing, like I still had the sense that he was nearby and that I could somehow go see him or visit him. I didn't know exactly how, but I just had a sense that it was possible. And so at around that same time, I was listening to, I was trying to get into podcasts. And so, it's kind of become a whole thing over the last 16 years. But back then it was pretty early, and Joe Rogan was sort of the main show. And back then his show was mostly about going to flotation tanks, or really like getting fucked up and then going into flotation tanks.
Yeah, a lot of psychedelics, a lot of mushrooms, then going in. Yeah.
Yeah. And so at that time I was working in Santa Monica. I did like a little Googling, and I found this float tank place in Venice Beach. And so I decided to go over there after work one day. And, and so for those people that don't know, like a float tank is basically a sensory deprivation chamber. So it's pretty dark in there, almost pitch black, if not pitch black. There's like 2,000 pounds of dissolved salt. They heat the water to like 90 degrees, 91 degrees. And so you basically lose your physical boundaries. You aren't quite sure like where your body ends and where the water begins. And, yeah, it's interesting when that happens, because your body spends a lot of energy just trying to find equilibrium, like, sitting in a chair, like supporting your head, which is quite heavy, keeping yourself warm, or, trying to cool yourself off, all these things. And so when your body's not spending energy doing that, like the energy goes elsewhere. And so after about an hour and a half of this, it was nice. It was pleasant. Nothing was really happening that was too spectacular. And so I decided it was time to go. And so as I moved to get up, I realized that my body was kind of frozen, like I couldn't really move. Um, Thought, okay, that's weird. And so this vibration started in my chest, and then it spread to like my stomach, and then my head, and then pretty soon my whole body was vibrating. And the next thing I knew, I was kind of shooting out the top of my head, and like I guess like traveling through space, for lack of a better word, and like going through like this vortex or a wormhole, and there were like brilliant colors on every side, and it was crazy. Like it felt more real than real. Like I don't know quite how else to describe it, but like a lot of times when you're having these transcendent or like peak experiences and expanded states of consciousness, like there's trouble with kind of coming back to ordinary consciousness and describing what happened exactly. Like the words don't quite work. But anyway, that's kind of the best I can do with it. And so I just had this sense that I was traveling really far, really fast, high rate of speed. And as this was happening, I started getting this, this kind of fear factor kicked in. And I thought, well, hold on a second here. Am I dying? Because like my dad, died of a heart attack. And this whole thing started with like these vibrations in my chest. And so, when I was stating this intention that I had to go see him, like, this was not what I had in mind. Like, I didn't mean that I wanted to have a heart attack too. And I started freaking out a little bit. And so as soon as that happened, like, wham, I was back in my body. And like, I had heard about body experiences before in astral projection. And so like, knew like right away what this was. And so, I showered up, like the paralysis had faded by that point. The shock of it had kind of woken my body back up. So like I got out of the tank, went to shower up, and kind of walked outside. The attendant greeted me. I was kind of telling him about it a little bit. And like this dude was like a pretty classic like Venice Beach burnout. He's kind of listening.
Like, he's like sick.
Yeah, right. Yeah, pretty much. Like I think his name was like Crash or something like that. I mean, it's like, oh, dude, that's crazy. You had an out of body experience. You fucked it up, man. Like you got to come back and do it again. It's like, all right, I'll come back. And so I went back a couple more times, and like it just didn't quite work the same way. Like I did, like it was cool, but like I didn't have an OBE. And so I got interested in trying to replicate that experience. And so I started doing some research, and I started bumping into this name, Robert Monroe a lot, who kind of, I guess, coined the term and like wrote 3 books about it. Back in the 70s, like he had these experiences in the 50s, back when like this was not mainstream at all. Like it was not polite conversation, and like he was a successful businessman and like in high society, and like these were not things that you talked about. And like now it's totally different. Like this stuff is ubiquitous. Like there's teachers everywhere. It's pretty wild. And so, I read about this HemiSync technology that he created to, try to facilitate these types of experiences. And then the other name that came up a lot was William Buhlman, who was, along with, Robert Bruce, probably the greatest living OBE writers, authors, teachers at that time. This is around 2010 again. And so it just came to happen that at around that time, William Buhlman had just started teaching his out-of-body intensive at Robert Monroe's Monroe Institute. And I was going to be, on the East Coast at the time. I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll try to go do this. And I thought, wait a second, this rings a bell. I think I've seen this somewhere before. And, I remembered that I had first seen HemiSync like a long time ago, like in the late 90s when I was flying back and forth to college a lot. So like HemiSync was advertising in the in-flight magazine in United, and they would kind of show the picture of like the brain waves when like you're not in a coherent state of consciousness, and then the brain waves when you are in a coherent state of consciousness. And the ads, like I can't remember what the copy was exactly, but it was something about what can you achieve when you're on HemiSync and like accessing peak states or full human potential. And I thought that was really interesting. And then, so I'm kind of going out of sequence here, so forgive me if this is hard to follow.
No, you're good.
So like that was like the mid 90s. And then around like 2000, 2002, somewhere in there, like I was home for Christmas vacation, and like my dad had like the full set of Gateway Experience, which is kind of the flagship HemiSync product. And like I remembered connecting those dots, like, oh, like I've seen that before. And he's like, yeah, you should check those out while you're home. And like I didn't. And so then like fast forward all these years later, and it's all starting to come back to me now after my dad's passing, my own OB in the flow tank, researching out-of-body experience, finding out about Bob Monroe again and William Buhlman. And so I'm connecting all these dots, and I think, okay, like, wait a second. I think I might have something here. And so, after my dad passed, I inherited all of the stuff. So like it was all in my garage. And so I went out there and started going through boxes, and sure enough, in one box, there was like the full Gateway Experience set and Bob Monroe's books. And like an application he had completed to go take Gateway Voyage at the Institute. And so I thought, okay, like, this is clearly a sign, like, this is, more than coincidence. And so I went to take Bill Billman's course after that. I think I, became somewhat proficient in, achieving the OBE state. And this kind of took me on like a whole journey of personal exploration and transformation that it's kind of carried me forward to this day.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, no. I was going to ask, how does a guy go from, because I believe you were hedge fund Wall Street guy, right?
Yeah.
And then you, a total 180 here.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. Your dad was a pretty spiritual guy.
Yeah. Yeah. But like, I mean, he was like a pretty vanilla guy in his day-to-day life too. Like he was a lawyer.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, he was into this stuff, and
interesting.
I kind of got into it too.
Did your dad actively teach you about it, or was he more like, look, I'm into this, and just was?
Not the HemiSync stuff. He would like kind of suggest other books and sort of try to point me in certain directions, but never specifically into this stuff. No.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're one of the few people I've heard that had a similar to me. I had that vibrational state. I've tried to explain it to everyone. I was like, most people don't have, at least that I talk to, my short little time here. And I try to tell everyone it was like a cellular and it just got so intense, but you're conscious the whole time. And that was it was interesting to me. Like you said, you started thinking about a heart attack.
Yeah.
You're there. I mean, you are there, which is super fascinating.
I mean, I'd say the vibrational experience is pretty common for people.
Is it? So I just haven't come across it with a bunch of people I've talked to.
Yeah. Especially the first time. It tends to fade over time, but yeah, the first time it's, I think, quite common, just anecdotally.
Have you, since, I'm assuming you have, tried to get in touch with your pops?
Yeah. So we had like a number of what I would describe as reconciliation experiences. And like as time went by, like he would eventually start coming to me in these forms that looked like a little bit different, and it felt like from further away, and like I was maybe kind of annoying him a little bit. And like, look, like, I have to kind of come from a pretty great distance to sort of come here and appear, before you in a way that is familiar to you. And like, even though like I don't really think time is linear in the way that, we sort of experience it, it's still, I know there's something about trying to contact, beings that are no longer here in 3D, where like the time factor, the linear space-time factor does seem to come into play. And so and so like after a certain period of time, it was less and less. But yeah, I do feel like, these out-of-body experiences, these experiences beyond ordinary physical waking consciousness were very helpful and cathartic in reaching some closure with my father.
That's awesome. Yeah. Do you have people in your life? So you went ahead and now you're the chairman president of HemiSync.
Yeah.
Do you have people in your life that are like, what are you doing, Garrett? What's going on here?
Yeah.
I'd imagine that's an interesting conversation if you'd be like, you did what?
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Fascinating.
and
Okay.
like a lot of my
Did you
finance.
lose any relationships, or was everyone just kind of like, all right?
I mean, not as a direct result of kind of taking this left turn. No, I mean, I think like a lot of my finance friends were actually pretty intrigued by it, especially just kind of by the overall concept of sort of leaving the world of finance to go buy my own business and own and operate it. Like I've had like a number of friends like contact me over the years about doing that piece of it, and like
Mm.
they would go on and like buy like roofing companies, not but yeah. Um, so it's
Do you,
been an interesting point of departure for.
do you guys even have a competitor at this point? Like
I
a
mean, binaural beats. So like, I mean, we're like a layered binaural beat technology. And so I mean, those are fairly ubiquitous now.
Mhm.
So I guess
The
in
internet is your competitor, or like
yeah,
YouTube being like someone being able to upload, I guess, binaural beats on their own kind of thing.
yeah. Um,
Okay.
so I mean, I would say yes. Mhm.
Here's a question I have. So it's often when you start very first getting into this stuff,
Mhm.
you will definitely come across the CIA, right, and the Army, and how they invested pretty heavily in the 70s and 80s, and then it's just like, poof, they haven't again. And
Right.
so my question to you is: blink once for yes, blink twice for no. Are they secretly doing it, or like why did it stop? And or do you think they just started doing their own stuff, or was it? Would you say like the nature of remote viewing is pretty difficult? Because I've talked to a lot of people now, and they'll say, look, remote viewing is even with the best of the best, it's hard because
Yeah.
when you're popping out, you're dealing with other people's thoughts, and you're not like it's not a perfect
Right.
representation of the world we live in. I mean,
Yeah.
things are a little wonky. It's off a little bit.
Right.
What is your theory on where they are, and does other countries have remote? Like, do you think it's a staple now in our government, or no? Is it
Um,
pushed off to the side?
it's a good question. I'm probably not the best person to ask, but
You
I've
can
had,
blink.
yeah, I've had, I posed that question to people who would have better insight into that. The answers I have heard is that the programs. So I've spoken to people that have participated in like the government, psychic spy programs. Um, And their response is that, to the best of their knowledge, the programs that they were involved in have indeed been wrapped up. They've closed. They don't know if the practice exists elsewhere in the government. It may or may not. A lot of it in the 70s and 80s sprung up in response to psychic spy programs that the Soviet Union had going on, and so it was kind of like
Mm.
it was mirroring sort of the nuclear arms race. Like government wanted to kind of keep up with this stuff. And like that seems like it's probably less of a thing now. So yeah, it
Interesting.
yeah.
It's interesting. It's one of those things that gets the hyper skeptic, I guess, somewhat. I guess it somewhat legitimizes it, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you come across a lot of, or are you just so plugged in that you don't even come across really that many skeptics anymore, or people who claim like,
No, I
this is.
mean, I still think of myself as a skeptic. Like I think that is a healthy worldview to have about all of
Yeah.
this stuff. Because again, like, part of the difficulty you have with you know, extraordinary experience is that the language doesn't quite do justice. Like we don't
It
have,
doesn't capture it.
yeah. And there's also this whole phenomenon of, as you expand beyond the physical, you start learning basically different ways of communicating. And so it tends to be increasingly symbolic. Um, and, a lot of the things that you might encounter are just presented in ways that you can understand them, so that your 3D mind can understand them and make sense out of them. And you might not be getting the whole picture either. Like oftentimes, like it'll feel like you're being flooded with information, like more information than you can really process or handle. And like what comes through is maybe like a sliver of it that you is
Mm.
actually like registering in your memory banks. And when you have a lot of people kind of visiting similar, let's call it locales. So Bob Monroe would kind of use the term focus levels to describe, these various states of consciousness that people could generally agree on. So, he would kind of direct them to a certain area. And so there might be like a mind awake body asleep state, or a state of expanded awareness, or a state of no time. And if enough people kind of had a similar type of experience, he would say, okay, so like we think this is like this state, and he would assign like a number to it. And like the numbers, 10, 12, 15, whatever, like they didn't necessarily mean like one was higher or better than the other. They were just kind of mile markers, or convenient labels to put on these locales. But as multiple people kind of go to, ostensibly the same area, they might come back with reports that are familiar, similar in some ways, but they'll also have, takes on it or perceptions of it that are unique to their own particular valence. And so that is why, that is one of the reasons why, language, I think, is inadequate for really kind of nailing a lot of these things down, both like the locales and the information that you're sourcing from these locales, and having them be broadly applicable here in physical matter reality, which is kind of part of what you were referencing with respect to remote viewing, and why isn't it kind of everywhere and more widely used or cited today.
Yeah, it feels like one of those things that would be, I don't know if everyone could do it. That would change things, right? I mean, it feels like one of those weird things that would get banned almost, like that or they wouldn't want you to talk about, I guess.
Right. I mean,
because it does shake up your world, right? I mean, once that happens, you go like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, you start to question religion a little bit. Not that religion is wrong, but you start to, it opens you up.
Yeah.
If anything, it blasts the door. I mean, it is you have to question a lot more things. Like crystals, Garrett, I'm never crystal guy.
Okay.
Now I'm like, I just got one just because. I'm like, I don't know if it does anything, but I got to be open to it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, it's a big deal. This isn't like something small we're talking about. This is like pretty gnarly. I mean, people can leave their bodies. That's insane to say.
Yeah. I mean, and so belief systems are really kind of central to our worldview and like who we take ourselves to be. And when they start getting blown apart, like that can be very destabilizing, both in good and bad ways. And, I think one of the primary benefits to doing this type of work, meditation, consciousness exploration, is that it allows people to move beyond their very limiting worldviews. And it's not for everybody, but for those that feel like they're ready for it or that they're interested in it, it can really expand your horizons and give you a broader perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. What is your thoughts on, I guess, artificial intelligence and consciousness? Because my theory is they will rise together, actually, because the more that AI takes our jobs, our, the boring stuff, the day-to-day stuff, and I think it'll be bumpy, by the way. I don't think this is going to be like a smooth ride. Well, let's say we get to the other side of this and it is doing the stuff we don't want to do, man, like the pencil pusher. I think people start to say, well, why am I here? What's the purpose? Like, I think that naturally will be the first thing. It's always been a question, but to me, I think it'll go up with it. What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, like whether or not, silicon can have consciousness in the way that we do, in the way that carbon-based life forms do. And, there are people on both sides of the debate that I respect. And, I think it's really to be determined. I mean, I think in the short term, like a lot of the hype around AI is exactly that. It's hype. And like, I'm sure eventually, like within our lifetimes, like it will come to fruition. But like, I personally don't think you're going to have conscious AI in the way that we would perceive to be conscious AI. Like, a silicon-based being having like, say, like an, like I don't think like that's like a next 5 years type of thing. Could be wrong, but
do you think the industry though, like the whole, like, I guess you could call it human connection, but like breath work, meditation, like, do you think all of that will will rise as AI takes that stuff over? Not even that they can be a conscious AI, but just
Right.
like the whole space. Do you think it'll rise or will it
Well,
decline, you think?
I think this field of expanded consciousness is growing rapidly, and like technology is not going to derail that. If anything, it will augment it. Um, because you'll have new types of technology that help you to induce these states that maybe previously took many years of practice. It will help you to reach them more readily, and it will help you to maintain them for longer. HemiSync is kind of like one of the early um, modes of technology that helps you to do that, but
Great example.
I
Yeah.
think there will be others. And yeah, like I'm not like a futurist or anything, so like I don't know how AI will kind of impact that or grow with it. But yeah, I do think that this expansion of consciousness that we're seeing right now will continue and probably accelerate.
Okay, I want to pivot a little bit to, I guess, when Robert Monroe came around, and speaking of HemiSync, like it was a pretty state-of-the-art, I guess, technology to, at least from what we know, to
Mhm.
acquire the out-of-body states
Yeah.
and or these paranormal experiences. Has there been any other breakthroughs since then? I mean, has science come around? I mean, has there been anything else where we're like, whoa, it's
Yeah.
expanded beyond that? Are we close to that?
Um, wait, in terms of like binaural beat technology, you mean, or just
Yeah,
like
I guess like the technology around. Like I know that his school is still going,
yeah,
and I know you're not connected to the school
right.
technically. You're not, right? I mean, you're
Yeah, that's
separate.
correct. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just curious. Like, are they teaching the same stuff that Robert was teaching back in the
Yeah.
70s, 80s, or has things expanded? Is there?
Well, I mean, I think the technology is largely the same, but the things you can apply it to are ever expanding. So there's a lot of things that go into making like a great album or like exercise or musical piece. So I mean, there's a technology piece to it, yes, but there's also like the scripting, like how it's spaced out. Um, which types of frequencies or background music or other sounds you use at specific areas of the exercise. And so this can be broadly applied to not only you know techniques that might help with having an out of body experience, but you talked earlier about uh, near death experience or lucid dreaming, or even like more everyday oriented tasks like just trying to concentrate better or trying to manifest something in your life. And so I mean there's endless application, and we're constantly trying to find new ways to apply it and new partners to work with, um, and creating new avenues for this work to grow. Um, so, and does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. Would you say that's like when you bought HemiSync, was that kind of in your? Is that the game plan? I mean, obviously, when you buy a company, you
Yeah,
want to expand it, right? Like, is that what you're thinking about as you think
yeah.
about the
Like
expansion of the company?
we want to meet people where they're at, and so part of it is ongoing research into potentially new carriers that could induce other types of experience that might be beneficial. But also, looking to partner with wearables. Um, so maybe like people can get like, custom HemiSync, depending on EEG brainwave patterns or heart rate variability. There's some interesting things going on with, vibra acoustic technologies now. And so maybe there's like some complementary things we can do there. You also see like light entrainment tools. And so there's like a whole constellation of technologies out there that are oriented around consciousness. And, we try to just point people in what we think is the right direction and encourage them to find out for themselves, to be curious and to use the tools that work for them.
That's awesome. Okay, I'm gonna ask you: have you ever encountered? There's a dark side to OBEs.
Mm,
Do you get asked about that often, or do
yeah.
you get no? Oh, you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your response to the people who've had pretty dark experiences? Because
Yeah.
if you just look up sleep paralysis, but for
Right.
example, and I had that in high school,
Yeah.
terrifying.
Right.
There's a scary, sketchy side to it where it
Sure.
feels like a demon that's in the, maybe whether that's our brains or not doing that, I don't know, but
Yeah, well, I mean, there's like all these old oil paintings, right, of people having the sleep
yeah.
paralysis experiences and like a
Mm-hmm.
demon sitting on their chest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, like I don't want to minimize anyone's fear. Um, so I mean, one of the reasons why Bob Monroe created what's called a preparatory process, which includes an affirmation at the end, is to try to create the right environment for having a positive experience that helps you to grow. And so there are some, pieces to that. The first is kind of just like raising your own vibrational frequency. The second is kind of imagining a resonant energy balloon. And so this is sort of like an energy barrier that allows you to take an energy that, is acceptable to you or desirable and to hold your own energy as well. And then there's also an affirmation where you are inviting, those beings who are aligned with you, who are of a vibrational frequency that you desire to, please assist you in helping you to have an experience that is consistent with your stated desires. And so all of those steps, can help to minimize the types of negative experiences that you're describing. With that said, we are powerful, immortal spiritual beings, and we cannot truly be harmed in these out of body states or in these expanded states of consciousness. And so that is important to remember. And it can be helpful to affirm that prior to putting on the headphones or meditating or having an experience. Have I personally encountered scary things out there? I have. In all the cases, though, like they were just representations of something within me that I needed to face, if that makes any sense.
But can you share that? Like, what are you talking about?
So, like, let's say you encounter like a scary being, like maybe it's big and hairy,
Like the Grim Reaper, something creepy.
yeah, or it's gonna
Okay.
follow you up. And so like the intent, like the immediate reaction might be to turn and run from it, but it's always helpful to ask, what do you represent? And when you do that, you can often be surprised by the answer that you get. And so with a lot of things, with a lot of fears, when you face them, you understand what is really underlying the fear or the representation of the fear. And it has a way of lessening or dissolving or being better understood. And then all of a sudden, it's not so scary.
Wow, that's super interesting. So rather than freaking out, going the opposite direction,
Yeah.
it is literally facing your fears and asking, what do you represent? And it might be my addiction or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Super interesting, Garrett. What is your take on why we're here? Everyone in the spiritual space kind of has a different theory. Like, why do you think we're here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the simplest answer is, we're here to learn and grow. Like this is like a big school, it's Earth School. And there's a lot to Earth School, just within like 3D physical matter reality, there's a lot to learn. But that's not all there is. So beyond the physical, there is this whole other universe really, and there's even more to learn out there. And you're not bound by your physical body while you're here in Earth School. I think that is one of the things that humanity is really waking up to right now. And it's pretty cool. And I have a lot of hope for it because, when I think, when you look at a lot of the problems that we face as a society, whether they be economic or political or environmental, whatever, I am not optimistic that we're going to solve a lot of them with, the conventional tools that we've had thus far, like dialogue, for instance. Like I don't know that that's that useful right now. And so I think the great hope for humanity is having more and more people do this type of inner work so that they might come to understand themselves in this much broader context. So they're not so wed to their belief system, so that they don't feel like they have to defend them with their lives, so that they're not so fearful of the other, those that they take to be different than themselves. And that can only happen when you acquire a much broader overview that is sort of free of conventional notions that are, um, governed by our backgrounds, our education, our upbringing, our religion, our profession. We have to have some broader sense of who we are as individuals and as a species and as a collective consciousness, I think, for real solutions to become evident.
I'm on the same page. I apologize, by the way. Sometimes I view you like I forget you're like running and owning a company. So if you can't answer some of these things that I'm saying, obviously like pass, and you probably are.
Well,
I am curious, and this will be one of those. Sorry, I'm going to throw it in the category. When it comes to religion, do you feel like religion had its place, and or to move forward as a society, as a human race, do you think it's necessary that religion is, I wouldn't say left behind, but what is your thoughts? I guess I will say left behind. I can't think of a better way to say that. The reason I bring this up is because the more I do this and the more I post things, it's always the Christian people. And I don't want to say maybe it's not, but I'm just going to say it, man. I could be wrong. It feels very much so like I get attacked the most by people who like Jesus. And I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. Because what I love about spiritual people per se, like people who really, really believe that we are all one and that this is actually an inner journey, that's what it is.
Yeah.
They're not trying to convince you to go any which way or join their team.
Right.
In fact, they're very respectful. And they view your religion like I'm starting to view Christianity as like a valid way to live your life, just like it is to be a plumber or whatever else you want to do with your life. Like it's a valid, you can come down here and experience that because it comes with its own set of problems and I guess good things that can happen, right? Like I won't say my family. I know my brother, my sister, if they had a gay child, for example, that would rock their world. It would not rock my world. Like I wouldn't care less. And so I'm curious on your thoughts on religion.
Yeah. So, I would say again that belief systems can be very limiting, and most belief systems are fear-based, right? And like, I don't want to single out religion as being the only one. I mean, it can apply to all types of belief systems.
It's a good point.
And so, yes, I think taken as a whole, belief systems, the less you can rely on them, the better, I think. And again, that's why we encourage people to find out for themselves. And like, we want to be respectful. I'm not saying that, they have to be attacked or like left behind or, they can't be part of all of this. It's just, you don't, it's like the more belief systems you have, the more your felt sense of life feels narrow, restricted, dull, gray, etc. And, it's not for me to tell people that they shouldn't live like that, but it's not like how I want to live. And we all kind of have to, and it's like, again, like this is kind of like a school. So we all kind of have to learn on our own, and, at our own pace and in our own time. And so we need to leave space for all of that. And like, I think the more you kind of like try to separate good and bad, wrong or right, like the more you kind of get back into this belief system or sort of labeling thing that is limiting. So it's, I think a lot of this is just learning how to leave space. I think one of the ways that we combat our fear is by trying to pretend like we know more than we do, because the unknown can be scary, right? But what happens when you have, say, a romantic partner that you know everything about, or that you think you know everything about? Like, they don't become very interesting at that point, right? And so, to me, the unknown is really where it's at. Like, that's where things are interesting and sexy and exciting. And you want to kind of find out more and more and more, and you keep pulling that thread. And when you have belief systems, like, you don't really have that, right? You're not curious because you think you know everything. And so again, like, the more you can get outside of that box, the more rich and fulfilling and exciting life is. For me, at least.
Oh man, I second that. I mean, the second I again had these moments, it's like feeling like you watch Harry Potter and you're like, oh my gosh, that's real. Like it's like you watch these movies and you go, this is crazy. Like it
Yeah.
just opens your mind to so much more that can happen in this world. And yes, it's more fun. It's it's just a better way to live versus like, scared all the time. I guess I have a little resentment still from being raised a certain way, but but also I think I'm growing past that, and I'm understanding that I probably chose that, and I've learned a lot from it, and I probably wouldn't respect Christians the way I do because I love my parents so much, and I think they're good examples of Christians. Like, meaning they're not super judgy, they're not they genuinely believe what they believe, and I think it actually helps me now in hindsight at 33 years old relate more to someone who is religious. Whereas if I didn't have that experience, I probably would be one of the people just like making fun of them or something.
Oh, interesting. So you're 33 now and going through all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
I know.
I didn't.
Sounds like.
Yeah. When I started this podcast, someone told me, they're like, "Did you know 33 is like a special, I guess, a special time or something like that?" And I was like, "Why is that?" I think it's when Jesus died was at 33, and I think there's
yeah.
It's like that, and then I heard it's also something, the yogic traditions or something like that, where it's like at 8.5. I don't know. I heard Sadhguru talk about it once. I was like, I don't know if that's the real or not, but I will say this, man. At 33, things are starting to change for me for sure. Launched the podcast, changing career. A lot is happening on my end, so pretty intense.
It's exciting.
Well, I guess I want to leave with my last question. I want to keep you too long. I mean, I've been really excited to speak with you, and I appreciate you coming on. I guess if I'm going to obviously link everything HemiSync down below. Is there anything you want to leave with the audience? Anything we didn't touch on today? Anything you guys are working on, either at the company or anything you want to tell my listeners or viewers?
No, you can check us out at HemiSync.com, or find our app in Google Play or the App Store. But yeah, like, again, we're really just kind of encouraging people to find out for themselves. Find the tools that work for you. We've got like a lot of free stuff on our YouTube channel. It's like at HemiSync videos. We're also like on a lot of the streaming services, Spotify, Apple Music, etc. You check us out there, get a taste. But yeah, happy to be here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, you guys should absolutely blow up your YouTube channel. Just go all in, Garrett.
Yeah,
YouTube. Blow it up. I think you get a lot all of attention.
Nice,
for sure. All right, brother. Thank you so much. Until next time, I will let you know when this goes live.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, Garrett. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.